Okay, so welcome everyone. This is Do No Harm. I am Rebecca Karchere. I am a medical intuitive and nutritionist since the year 2000. We're in 2019, and I get all heated and crazy about this topic that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about chemotherapy and radiation. And I'm coming from a place of experience and all that good stuff. So I'm going to hand it over to Mary, and she can introduce herself, and we're going to talk to you about chemotherapy and radiation and whether it is harmful or not. Mary?
Thanks, Rebecca. Hey, everybody. Mary Von Ohlen here, holistic recovery coach. Rebecca just reminded me that it's been probably a good 20 years 20 years since I read a book called The Cancer Industry, which I think came out in 1996, actually, like over 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and 22 years ago. My math's a little off today.
Aw, that's okay. It's all good.
1996, The Cancer Industry book by Ralph Moss. I also watched a video called World Without Cancer. I think there's a book that goes along with that. That was from like the 70s. And so, this is information that, foundational information to consider regarding chemotherapy and radiation and the origin of those and what goes on behind the scenes. And so ever since then, I also have been very passionate about this topic. And so we're just going to provide you guys today with some food for thought. Again, coming from the standpoint of start fresh, clean slate, come from a place of a broad perspective and considering objectively some facts before making decisions about our health and well-being.
That is our goal, yes. So from what I've been that's an older documentation. I mean, I have the Truth About Cancer, and I've watched the series, not all the way through, but I'm privy to it. I get their emails and stuff. And I think that Ty Bollinger has said that statistically we're now in, there's 1 in 2 chance of getting cancer, right? So every other person in the room, right, is going to get cancer. That's basically what the statistics are. So I would suggest, Mary and I were talking about this earlier, that we might as well just get informed now with the assumption that this may become an issue that you have to deal with at some point in your life. And that's kind of my attitude in general on most things, is to be proactive, and preventative is to know. I've suggested this before to patients too in the past, is what I'll do for myself is think of yourself as if you're already sick, and what would you do? What would you do for yourself, and do that now? Do that now. Most people would start juicing more and exercising and doing all these detoxes. I'd suggest do it now, right? So that's cuckoo, but it works. Do you have anything to say about that?
No, I don't know. I think that makes sense, because what you're talking about is doing it now from a place of power and from a calm place when you know you're not, hopefully, really sick, as opposed to what I was thinking about today is how many people wait. If you wait, then we wait till you get some kind of news, and suddenly you're thrown, kind of spinning and in a place of fear, and then making decisions from a place of fear. And when we make decisions from a place of fear, we're more likely not to kind of choose the easier, more powerful and softer way, the gentler, kinder, truthful way, because we're aligning with fear, not faith.
Yes. So eat your vegetables, drink your water, do all that good stuff, get exercise, forgive your neighbor, etc. But in the meantime, if you were diagnosed, here's some things that I pulled off of Truth About Cancer that is worth noting. What was talked about was that, well, radiation in and of itself, whether it's mammograms, x-rays for your teeth, your spine, etc., going to the airport, being on a plane, there's radiation all over, and yet it causes cancer. With enough accumulation, you're increasing your risk of these mutated cells. So that's just everyday life. I don't get mammograms. I have had x-rays for my teeth in the past. I don't do that anymore. But my point is, in your everyday life, we're exposed to radiation, cell phones, computers, and yet, if you were diagnosed with cancer, they would give you more radiation. I'm so confused. I mean, aren't you? That just doesn't make any sense. So radiation causes cancer. It's a fact. So why would I then be given more radiation when I have cancer? I don't know, Mary. I mean, what world am I in?
Common sense would dictate that this is a little bit insane strategy from an objective standpoint.
From a logical standpoint, it makes no sense to me at all. So what you can do in the meantime is reduce this radiation exposure to not make yourself more susceptible, and then not take radiation. If you actually have cancer, would be my choice. But anyway, but this concept of chemotherapy and radiation really stems from, really came about after World War II, which to me, I'm writing about it right now in my book. And I talk about how this is just World War II all over again. It's just more subtle, and it seems like we're not in a war, but we are in a war. And it's not the way to heal if we feel that there's a war within ourselves, right? Am I making any sense on that?
I'm following you. You guys will have to comment and let us know if you have followed this.
Mm-hmm. This is not, so first of all, we don't want to be at war with ourselves. And I know that there's this idea of the war on cancer. There's no war. If you want a war, you're going to get a war. Chemotherapy and radiation are warlike tactics. Why would you be at war with your physical body? That doesn't, again, more logic doesn't make any sense. The antidote or the cure for any disease is love, right? So is that loving? No. Okay, that's just my opinion. We're not. Here's another point of view that I'd like to share. If you have a compromised immune system and you have a lot of cancer cells in your body, and you've been labeled or diagnosed, your immune system is compromised. So these chemicals, this radiation, is further going to deplete and put your immune system in a weakened state. Would it not? I mean, the reality is that a healthy person would become sick from chemotherapy and radiation, and that is more common sense. Okay. So we know that there's a lot of, when I say a lot, there are billions of dollars in this type of therapy. And in fact, from what I understand, again, from this source, that it's illegal for anything other than chemotherapy and radiation to be recommended by conventional medicine. That's my understanding. Do you have anything
I don't know that from a legal standpoint, but it certainly would explain why that seems to be the only thing that's ever recommended formally.
Yeah. So everyone else, every other natural whatever is inferior. And it has a lot to do with the fact that there's a lot of money tied up into this industry. And therefore, we're not really looking at what is best for the patient. We're looking at what's best for profit. And to me, that's, again, harm. Okay. What else do I have here? At least we can laugh about it. What I've also learned is that when you take chemotherapy, it actually strengthens the cancer cells that supposedly they're killing. So it's just like with the antibiotic, with antibiotic overuse. You get these cells that become stronger with exposure to it, because they're programmed to survive just as we are. And so these cells are even more. That's what I understand, is that after that 5, you go through your chemotherapy and radiation protocol. Then there's this phase where you think you're okay, and then the cells come up even stronger. The mutated cells take over with a second infection, and that's usually where people they don't make it. And so that's a nice way of saying it, isn't it? And so the reality is that after that second rise of the cancer cells, there is a 2% chance of survival. That's what I've gathered from the Truth About Cancer. So if there's a 2% chance of survival taking chemotherapy and radiation, what the hell are we doing? Mary?
And again, I'm sure people are watching saying, is it really 2%? Let's say it was 20%. Again, okay. What the hell are we doing?
Yeah.
We repeat. Shouldn't there be a better way? Shouldn't we be doing better by now? It's like you talked about with the wars, it's like, why do wars keep happening? It's like wars don't end conflict. That's bringing conflict to conflict. It's not a solution. Right. The same concept with this. We're battling cancer. We're battling things with more, with more harmful things. It doesn't work that way. That's going against nature, I should say. It's certainly not the easy way to do anything. And it's not the solution. Truthfully, it's never really cured anything, right. The other thing that I wanted to bring up too is some people might say, okay, well, but don't they get better and better? It's like, okay, well, when there has been improvements made, this is my opinion and my observations. Start with that. But when there have been improvements made to this industry, okay, chemotherapy, radiation, these primary medical treatments, strategies to fight cancer, the so-called improvements are like, well, yeah, we know that, let's say chemotherapy, we know that it harms your whole body, so we keep making it more and more targeted, right? Oh, it's more targeted now. It's only going to harm certain areas, or it's going to go right in there. Listen, it's still harming your whole system, right? You can't harm one part, not affect the whole, okay? Right. But also, one of the treatments you hear more about now is immunotherapy. And I'm not an expert in this either, but I will quickly give you my take on this for your consideration. So immunotherapy is about like injecting bacteria into the site or the organ where the cancer exists. For example, bladder cancer, okay? They inject into your bladder bacteria that I believe came about from attempting to have like a TB, a tuberculosis vaccine. It's basically like pumping bacteria like a vaccine into the location of the cancer, where there are cancer cells, in hope to stimulate your immune system to go and fight in that area. Now, so this is me thinking about this first time I read about this. So you got cancer in the first place. The cancer cells are accumulating in a certain area. Why isn't your immune system already, why is your immune system not able to handle them to begin with? And by giving it more, how are you helping it? Again, I'm just not a doctor, not a scientist, just common sense here, putting it out there. And even if it's effective, which some people might argue, I don't know, some people might argue that it is, that's fine. What was causing it in the first place? Why was your immune system compromised in the first place that you couldn't that your own immune system couldn't handle it, and that there became this overgrowth? Because let's face it, we all have some cancer cells in our body. Yeah. It's whether or not they take over, whether or not they become a nuisance, right? Mm-hmm. So the best that they have right now is or the latest, that you hear about is immunotherapy for certain cancers more and more. And even with that, I look at it from a common sense perspective and say, listen, they're still missing the mark. I don't care how effective it's claimed to be with certain types of cancers.
Mhm.
Why did you get it in the first place? How can we strengthen your system so that it doesn't keep coming back? Because most people who get this kind of therapies still keep having to get them over and over again. So I don't really get it.
Well, aside from money,
Well, yeah.
I hear you. It doesn't, yeah, we need more information on that. But yeah, from what you're explaining, it doesn't make any sense except that someone wants to make money out of the deal. So, yeah. So that's the long and the short of it here is that I can't stress enough is that your health and well-being is not considered as the primary goal. And so that's the shame of this system and the shame that this exists. And I think it is the disease itself, is that that greed is more important than human life. So there's a couple more points that I grabbed out of the truth about cancer. There was a survey done in 2014 of oncologists who said that if they were diagnosed or if a family member was diagnosed with cancer, they would refuse chemotherapy and radiation. That speaks volumes. And then the other thing was that, there was a journal in 2009 that it is so toxic. And I don't know where I got the source, but other than the truth about cancer, that chemotherapy and radiation is so toxic and harmful that it would be better to do nothing. Yeah. Okay. So I think that sums up. Oh, I have one more little statistical little fact here. Yes, X-rays and gamma rays, which cause cancer, is admitted, and it's admitted by the American Cancer Society. What world do we live in? I'm sorry. So I think that's a wrap for today. I don't know. I have no words. No words. So anyway, back to you, Mary.
Yeah, there are a few things that make us speechless, and when you really just throw out some some food for thought like that, it's hard to know what to say about it.
Yeah.
Other than it feels like some images that are coming to mind, like almost like a snowball, like things just kind of keep going and building and it gets out of control, and now it's like an avalanche. I don't know if there's a good analogy or not, but I just had this image. It's also like addiction, and that's my forte. It's like everyone's kind of stuck in this with blinders on, and it's like the elephant in the room that they also talk about, right, in the family disease of addiction. And there's like this obvious thing going on that's just off and no one's talking about it, or enough people are like, la, 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 I don't want to hear about it, right?
Right.
Just keep operating in denial. And a lot of the times it's hard for people to either even consume a simple video like this, where we're just throwing a perspective out there for you to consider, kind of logic. And it's hard for a lot of people not to get defensive or shut down because, like Rebecca said in the beginning, cancer is such a rampant condition now, that issue, that who is there on the planet that doesn't have, or at least in our society, in our culture here in America, doesn't have family members and or friends who have been affected and have chosen the medical route. And so it's hard to not get defensive sometimes for people to go like, oh gosh, well, if I consider this, and if this is not right, then that means, oh my God, what did they do to my, loved ones? What are they doing to my loved ones? Like that can be really hard to face. And sometimes it's just easier to, like, to see no harm, hear no harm, not look at it. But when you really open your eyes and take an objective view and look at these things, like I mentioned these books that were from decades ago, and this is factual information. Okay, you can follow the trail of the money and the greed, and it's really sad, and it's actually that's what's sick. That's the sickness. Right. The sickness is on a societal level, and it's about greed. And again, it goes back to being in that same resonance and that same frequency of fear. Greed comes out of fear. So again, we're coming from faith and love here, and we're just hoping to open your mind a little bit, open your heart a little bit, and let some of the light in, some of the truth in, and come from your own power and discernment to evaluate what to do before something happens.
And we're going to put a lot of resources with this video. One obviously is Truth About Cancer, and there's a handful of other ones, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of things you can do instead of this path. And it sounds like, honestly, it sounds like it's a no-brainer. I shouldn't have to sell this to anybody. When you look at the statistics of 2% success rate, I'd say you got nothing to lose. Eat your vegetables, exercise, forgive your neighbor, drink your water, etc. But anyway, I'm here for, as a healer, as a medical intuitive with all these psychic abilities. I'm available for appointment. My book is coming out this June. My workshops are on my website. You can do an online course with me there. Lots of different things, lots of different resources, endless resources. So, yeah.
Yes, we'll put both our contact info after the video as well. I mentioned my main forte is working with addiction recovery, but also stress management in general and shifting people's awareness, because you can't change what you're not aware of, right? So that's usually the first step in any type of self-growth, any process of transformation, process of improvement. The other piece is managing emotions. A lot of the times, something's going on that we're not managing in our emotional being, in our emotional body, and that affects our physical body. So that's usually where I'm coming from as well. What's really behind your pain? Where's it stemming from? What are you not dealing with? So yes, more resources in this in the description. Please comment, like, subscribe, share. We appreciate that you guys have been tuning into this mini series. The other the previous episodes you can find on here, and we will have one final episode to wrap up this little series that will really just focus on all the many, 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 many solutions that Rebecca just alluded to. So tune in to our final episode shortly. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Do no harm.
No harm.